Let's talk boundaries, parental involvement in your spicy life, and what the do not deprive verse really means. If you don't know me, hi, I'm Angela, the Christian Sexpert. I talk about all things sex and intimacy and Christian marriage. I received this anonymous inquiry. Pause to read. There's so many things happening in this note that you sent to me. First of all, I'm sorry that you were spiritually abused by your mother and your husband. So let's look at biblically. That verse is not being used correctly in this context. Second of all, if we want to look at actual biblical law says that there is a very long period in the postpartum in which a woman is ritually unclean and her husband isn't even allowed to touch her, let alone provide him with a release. Second of all, if you're going to use a verse against somebody, that opens you up to having any verse used. So I would have told my husband, well, it's not very loving me like Christ loved the church to force me into unwanted sexual touch when I just shoved a watermelon out of a hole this big. Let's get to the actual context of the do not deprive verse. So Christians in that community in which Paul was writing the letter to were using celibacy as a form of worship. So these people were getting married, and prior to the marriage, there was the expectation of sex happening after marriage, because that's what he says. It's better to get married and have sex than to burn with desire, right? So the expectation was they were going to get married so they could have sex. Well, then after the marriage, people were turning around and saying to their spouse, you know what, actually, I'm going to remain celibate as a form of worship. And so the depriving word in the verse there is actually more of a defraud, to defraud someone, to withhold something that was expected. And so the expectation was they were going to get married so they could have sex. And then afterwards, there were people saying, well, I took a vow of celibacy. So they were defrauding their spouse in that. So the verse does not actually mean you can't say no because you just had a baby. The verse means don't promise one thing and then deliver something else after you get married. That's what the verse means. So my friend, you have some decisions that you need to make. I would actually speak with a therapist, because you need to set some real hard boundaries with your mother. Because why is your mother talking to your husband about your sex life? That's flippin' weird. And you need to set some real firm boundaries with your husband, because this is bordering spiritual and sexual abuse, if not actually both of those things. And I am so sorry. You deserve so much more than this.